Welcome or welcome back to Mia's Life with Books. First things first, let's ignore how bad the lighting is at the moment. It is almost dark outside, bear in mind it is only 4 o'clock, but obviously the clocks went back so it's getting darker earlier. But I kind of had to film this intro now because I'm already halfway through the current book that I'm reading, as I hadn't had time to do the intro before getting as far into the book as I did. But for this week's vlog, I just decided to do some mood reading for a week and read some anticipated releases or just books that I've had my eye on for a while. I have no idea where we're going to go with what books I choose. Apart from one book in particular, I think may or may not be my next read, but it will probably be more likely read this week. But right now, my current read is Mate by Ali Hazelwood, which has been one of my most anticipated releases of the year. And as I said, I am 200 pages into it and I am absolutely loving it. If you know me, you know I am an Ali Hazelwood girly through and through. I always say this when talking about her book. She is one of my absolute favourite authors. I always love every single book I've read from her. Out of her full-length novels, only one of them has been 4.5 stars and the rest have been 5-star. Maybe it's because I'm a bit biased and I just love her book, but either way, she is an incredible author for me, one of my absolute favourite, and I just always have the best time reading her book. Naturally, that's no different with this book. I actually read the majority of this one today at uni. If you've seen any of my other vlogs, you will know that I do have a 3-hour break in between a lecture and a seminar, so I do spend a lot of that time reading, and that's what I did today. I started this one last night and only read the first couple of chapters, so around 30 pages, and then this morning at uni I have read around 170 pages. I got a decent chunk read in one go, and it is just so much fun. I can't go too much into what this one is about because this is a direct sequel to Bride, just following different characters. It definitely does mention big parts of the plot from Bride, things that will probably spoil Bride, so I'm not going to go into specifics with this plot, but I will say that this follows Serena, who is Misery's best friend from the first book. Again, we're kind of back in that Omega-verse kind of fantasy world, but also human world where there are just vampires and werewolves and a lot of different political things with the different races, I suppose you could say, like with the human race and then the werewolves and the vampires and all the different territories and just, yeah, the political things that are going on with them. However, I would not necessarily classify this as a fantasy. Whilst there are fantastical creatures, it is kind of a semi-fantastical world. I would still more so just clarify this as a romance book, but more of like a paranormal romance book. But that obviously is not a bad thing. That's not anything against Ali Hazelwood. I think the main point of Mate and also of Bride was just to be a paranormal romance anyway, or at least that's how I view it, and I know I'm not the only one that views it that way. That being said, I do think the little bits of fantasy we do get, just in terms of how we've got werewolves and vampires and the politics, I think that is always so interesting. And while that is kind of behind a lot of the motivations of characters and events in this duology, I suppose, I still think the romance is kind of at the centre and that is the focus of this story, and that is always so fun as well. As you may be able to tell by title, this is the fated mates trope, which I do think is an interesting trope. I think it can be done really well, but it's also not one of my favourites. I don't know if that's because there was a time where I literally read like 3 fated mates books in a row and it was just getting a bit old to me. I think in this book it seems to be a bit different because there are certain other complications that kind of come into this fated mates situation, so it's not just as simple as them being fated mates, which I think is making it a bit more interesting. And like I said, because I feel like fated mates is more of a fantasy trope anyway, the fact that it's more of a romance, to me it doesn't matter as much how that is kind of portrayed, since I'm just kind of reading it to see what the romance is like anyway, if that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense, but my point is I'm actually really enjoying the trope in this book and how it is done, because I do think it is that bit different, and I am just really enjoying this book anyway. Ali Hazelwood's writing I will eat up every single time. There's just something about it that is so addictive and just completely consumes me, and I just always fall in love with the books and the writing and the characters, especially because we already do know the characters from Bride, and we also have appearances from Misery and Lo from Bride and other characters that we've met, so that is also really fun. I also just do love this cover. I think it's so cool. But yeah, I don't have any complaints, and I will also say there is a storyline in this that seems to make the plot in general have a bit more substance to it. Like, there isn't, for our main character Serena, it's not just the kind of romance going on, there's some other things things going on in her life that also aren't related to some of like the politics of the world. There are a few different elements going on within the romance, and also to me, even though they are fated mates, it's giving like slow burn fated mates, which definitely adds a different dynamic to it, which again I think is kind of to do with the certain complications that I mentioned previously. So it's interesting to see how that's going to play out, because I think it'll be fun to see where we go from here. So far this book has not been spicy whatsoever, but I do know that this book does get very spicy, so I'm sure that will come in the second half of the book at some point. I'm just not sure when, but at the moment I am really enjoying it. I love the characters. I do love the kind of magical, fantastical aspects that we do get, even if they're not that prominent. It just makes it a bit more of an interesting romance, having that kind of different setting and different types of characters. As always, Ali Hazelwood can do no wrong, and yeah, I'm just loving it. Please do not look closely at my fringe. It has actually been doing my head in. I have low-key been having a breakdown over it this morning just because it is not doing what I want it to do, and everything I do with it just makes it look stupid, because essentially I need to trim it, but I can't do that until my next hair wash day. I should have done it the last time I washed my hair, which was a couple of days ago, but I thought it would be fine, but it's just not fine, and everything I do with it just makes it look stupid. I straighten it so it looks perfect and how I want it, and then 2 seconds later it's just gone, and it's really doing my head in, and I'm like this close, screaming and crying, so let's just ignore that. But I am persevering and filming a vlog update anyway. At least the curls look nice. Anyway, it's fine. Let's talk about Mate by Ali Hazelwood. I have now finished it. It actually took me a bit longer to finish this than I was anticipating, just because I didn't spend as much time reading as I thought I would over the past couple of days, which is fine. I was still reading decent amounts. Like, I think I still read like 100 or so pages each day, which is still pretty good going. I was just anticipating being able to read kind of the rest of this on Wednesday instead of finishing it yesterday. But either way, I have finished it and I did absolutely love it. I had such a fun time with this one. This, however, didn't quite reach the 5-star feeling for me. I loved everything about it and I don't necessarily have complaints as such, but I have given this 4.5 stars, which is of course still an amazing rating, and it's still a testament to how much I love this book and how much fun I had with it. But yeah, I just didn't quite reach the 5-star feeling that I usually have with Ali Hazelwood's books. And I feel like as well, as much as I loved this one, I did love Bride just that bit more, and I felt like Bride I more easily gave that 5-star status to, so I thought it kind of made sense to have this one as 4.5 in comparison to Bride, if that makes sense. So that's kind of why I settled on the 4.5 stars. I honestly did absolutely love this. Again, I can't really go too much into too many of the details just because there are major spoilers for the plot and some reveals in Bride if I focus on specific aspects of what happens in here. But what I can say is, I do think, as I think I kind of mentioned, there are more things going on with the character of Serena than just the romance. I think that did add initially different layers to the plot. So the majority of this book, actually, it was pretty much spice free. Like, there weren't any spice scenes until a small percentage of the book towards the end. Well, maybe like more the end of the middle, if that makes sense. Felt like we really got to focus on other aspects of the plot and other aspects of the romance, which I think Ali Hazelwood always does very well anyway. I think her spice scenes are kind of always seamlessly woven into a romance. I'm not against spice, but I can be very picky with it. I think I get very cringed out and I get the ick very easily with spice scenes. I don't know what it is, and that's just a personal thing for me. So when something is very, very spice heavy and almost reliant on the spice, for me that's just something that I don't necessarily enjoy. It may put me off a book a little bit more, but I always feel like the way Ali Hazelwood has written spice in the past and also in this book, I don't necessarily have any negative feelings towards it, and I do quite almost enjoy the way that she deals with it. And I think, as I said, a lot of the time it is part of the plot, and especially in this book, when we did get that spice, yes, after the first kind of spice scene, it was almost not constant but very, very frequent for a good few chapters, but that was also because of the situation in the plot. Like, it did make sense for what was happening in the plot. Again, I can't say what it was. If you read this or have read this, you will understand. Like, it is a major plot point. It obviously was pretty obvious. It made sense as to why there was so much spice surrounding that plot point at that point in the book. So I do think it was used well as a plot device and it just made sense. And although I do feel like I am much more aware of werewolf anatomy than I need to be at this stage, I don't think that completely turned me off. Obviously, obviously I still gave this book 4.5 stars, so it's not like I was hating on this book because of that. Moving on from the spice part of the plot, like I said, the different layers that we did have in this plot were very interesting. We had a kind of mystery illness trope, we had a bit of a cult trope, and I do love a good cult, usually in thrillers, but it worked well in this, and it makes sense, and I think cults in any book can be quite entertaining. So that was an interesting layer and plot development. The other day when I was talking about it, I said the races, as in werewolf race and vampire race. The word I was actually looking for to describe it better was species. But anyway, the politics between the different species, and even between like different packs or different sectors within the werewolf species, that was very interesting, and I think that was very well done. In terms of having, you know, different conflicts and situations that happen in a romance anyway, having that as kind of politics to do with these species, I think worked very well and did make it a bit unique and added a bit more to the plot, so I think that was done very well. I do think these books do just give typical Ali Hazelwood vibe, but just with that fun, unique, extra twist of it obviously being paranormal creatures and having those paranormal politics as opposed to just typical day-to-day human problems and issues and things that we have to overcome. I think having slightly different challenges to overcome in these books does just make it that bit more unique, as I was saying. I also did love having Serena as the main character. She was a character that I did enjoy and was intrigued by in Bride, so it was nice to get to know her a bit more and to kind of see her own story, and also just to see more of her interactions with Misery and other characters that we'd met in Bride. That always makes it a bit fun with interconnected standalones when you see different situations and appearances from characters that you already know. I also really did enjoy seeing the pack dynamics explored in this. I think seeing how the pack members interacted with each other, with Serena, with Cohen, I think it was all very interesting, and again just added a bit more, and it gave a bit more of a dynamic to the different characters, and I feel like we did really kind of dive a little bit into pack psychology almost, and just seeing how it all worked and how the characters all interacted, I think made for an extra interesting kind of side plot. Well, I suppose not even side plot, because it wasn't really a plot line, it was just more of like, I suppose it was part of it, but it was more so like context to the situation that we're in. I think overall I just really enjoyed this book. I loved it. It was that fun, witty banter and amazing characters and fun romance that Ali Hazelwood loves to give and I love to read. Yeah, this was a definite success for me, and now I am all caught up with Ali Hazelwood's, you know, full-length books. So I'm waiting for the next one. I absolutely loved this one. 4.5 stars, and I just had the best time, and I do recommend this, especially if you really enjoyed Bride. I do think you will enjoy this one. Very pleased with this one. And as I did mention, there has been one book that has been on my mind to pick up for this video, and since we are mood reading, I am in the mood to read it, and that is Alchemy of Secrets by Stephanie Garber. Stephanie Garber is another one of my favourite authors. I absolutely love her Caraval and Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogies. They're some of my favourite books of all time, and as soon as I heard that she was coming out with this one, I pre-ordered the signed exclusive edition, and look how stunning it is. It is just absolutely gorgeous, and it's signed, so we love that, we really do. And although I did finish Mate yesterday, I didn't actually end up starting this yet. So I'm gonna start it pretty much now, once I finished updating you guys. I have heard, not mixed things, because everyone that I have seen talking about this has enjoyed it to some extent. It's just more I have heard some people have been slightly disappointed for certain reasons, but not to the point where it's completely lacked their enjoyment. It's just, I think for a lot of people it seemed this would be a 5-star prediction, and it just didn't reach the 5-star point. It was still a book they enjoyed. So I'm intrigued to see what I think of this, because for me, in my head, I would say this would be a 5-star prediction. So I don't want to go into it with too high hopes just because of what I have heard. I do think I'm going to enjoy it regardless of whether it ends up being a 5-star. Like, I think it will still be at least a 4-star, if not, you know, 4.55. So I think I'm going to enjoy it anyway, because I have heard it still has the Stephanie Garber typical whimsy, beautiful writing, and that is something that I really enjoy. And I have also heard this has a lot of mystery elements to it. So while it is a fantasy, it does also have mystery and sometimes a little bit of thriller thrown in, and obviously I love that genre as well. But for me, it's shaping up to something that I do think I will enjoy anyway. So just because it may not have reached the 5-star prediction for a lot of other people, I think it could still reach the 5-star prediction for me. I have seen some people give this 5 stars, so it's not like no one's rated it 5 stars, so there is still hope. and it's just gorgeous anyway, and I love Stephanie Garber, so I can't wait to read it, and it sounds so interesting from what I do know. I will probably give a full synopsis once I give my first update, once I've started it, just so I am a bit more fully confident on what the plot is, because again, I don't want to actually read the blurb, even though I do know a lot about it already going into it, but I don't want to read the blurb anyway, so we'll just wait until I'm a bit further into it, and then I will let you know what's going on and also what my thoughts are, which I'm sure will be positive in one way or another. So let's just start this absolutely stunning book. I'm obsessed. I already love this book so much. I'm just over 150 pages into this book, so I'm pretty much almost halfway through because of how short this book is. I think it's only around 320 pages. Honestly, when I tell you I am loving it, I am loving it. I just feel like Stephanie Garber casts a spell with her writing, and I am well and truly under that spell. Straight from the beginning, from the very first line, her writing is so whimsy and magical, and even though we are kind of in this almost magical realism world as opposed to a whole brand new fantasy world, the magic in her writing really still creates a magical setting, which makes it so interesting knowing that this is kind of supposed to be like a modern day real world setting just with magic woven within it, and I think that's so fun. It's also really giving those old Hollywood vibes, even if again we are technically set more or less in present day. The vibes of this book are giving. They are just so much fun, and I am so consumed by them, and I feel like the whimsy magical nature of this setting and how involved you feel really does make sense for the storyline that we've got, and it really helps to bring the storyline to life as well as just the setting, if that makes sense. It makes the plot that we have seem like it actually could happen in our real life with this whimsy magicness, or magic whimsiness I suppose sounds better. Anyway, let me tell you a bit about that plot. In Alchemy of Secrets, we follow our main character Holland, and when Holland was in college she took this class called Folklore 517, which was taught by this mysterious professor that they call the Professor. And this class was full of the professor telling stories about myths and legends, mostly set around LA and Hollywood, and Holland is a true believer of these myths and legends and of the Professor. She believes them to be real. She's constantly seeking signs that these myths and legends are real, and we do find out why she's so drawn to these folklore tales, which I think is really interesting, but obviously I won't say why. But as she is searching for proof that these stories are real, she gets herself thrown into this kind of crazy world of myths and legends, and is ultimately sent on a quest to find this magical object that could potentially save her life. There's also a lot of other crazy things going on, like for example, a random stranger turning up saying that her twin sister had sent him to help protect her and save her life as well. We've got a lot of kind of mystery aspects going on here. There's lots of things that we can't be fully sure what the truth surrounding them is, so there's a lot of tension in that sense, as we, like Holland, don't know who we can trust, who we can't trust, and we're also drawn into the world of these myths and legends alongside Holland, especially because sprinkled throughout this book we have chapters in second person perspective, which is the you do this, you do that, and those are painting us as other students that take this class, so it's almost like we are transported into these classes with the professor as she is telling us different myths and legends that Holland most likely would have learned when she was doing this course. So we are automatically transported into the world ourselves anyway. I think even if that wasn't used as second person perspective, I think the way Stephanie Garber writes, even in Holland's perspective, is so captivating and paints such a great vivid picture of the setting and really brings it to life. I think we would still feel consumed and part of the story anyway. I think it just adds a little bit extra having those extra chapters. But this is just all so intriguing and I'm absolutely flying through it. I've said so much about the writing, but I really do just love it. I think Stephanie Garber is such a lyrical, beautiful writer. I also think her plots are always so interesting, and so are her characters. I'm really intrigued to find out more about certain characters and kind of see what the truth surrounding them is, and also rooting for Holland the whole way through, hoping that, you know, things work out for her in the end. Although obviously I think this is the first book in a series, whether it's going to be a duology or a trilogy, I'm not sure, but I do know this isn't a standalone, so I'm anxious to kind of see what parts of the story we wrap up in this book and what is kind of going to be left with us to look forward to in the next book, if that makes sense. I definitely really enjoy Holland as a character. I think she's really sweet, and I kind of love how she is so enraptured by these myths and legends, and I think just kind of her almost passion for them in a way is also very captivating, and it makes them seem more interesting to me as a reader. And I think it makes it more interesting when she's brought into that world, because it is kind of that like wonder and awe in it, even though the world is perhaps more dangerous and less whimsy than we might expect it to be. I find it so much fun, and I am just absolutely captivated by this. I'm obsessed with it, and I can't wait to read more. I am hoping I might even be able to just sit down and finish the rest of this book at some point today, because I am so obsessed. I just need to know what happens, and I have so many questions because there are so many different parts of this mystery that are all surrounding Holland, her connections, and these myths and legends, and I think there's so much more to be explored and to be found out and revealed that I can't wait to see how that is all revealed and how we kind of make our way through getting all the answers to all these questions that we have. If it keeps going the way that it's going, I think it actually could be a 5-star, because I am honestly loving it. I loved it from the first page. I just cannot get enough of Stephanie Garber and her writing and her worlds. It's just so magical and whimsical, and I just love that in a book, and I think Stephanie Garber is one of the authors that does that best, so I'm so glad that I picked this one up. So yeah, we've got some very, very positive thoughts so far. Yeah, I really do just think this book is as beautiful on the inside as it is on the outside. The writing is just chef's kiss. I'll come back to you probably when I finish this.
I've just finished Alchemy of Secrets. I'm going to give my full thoughts in the morning, but I just wanted to say I loved this book. Everything I said about being obsessed and loving it before stayed the entire way through, and it was a 5 stars, and I can't wait to speak to you guys about it in the morning because I have a lot to say.
So as I mentioned briefly in the last clip, I have finished Alchemy of Secrets. I loved it. I was obsessed with it. I gave it 5 stars. It was honestly everything that I could have asked for and more. As I also mentioned previously, the writing in this is just so beautiful. I will always eat up Stephanie Garber's writing because there's just something about it that is so magical and whimsical. I think even if she wasn't writing a fantasy book, that kind of magic and whimsy feeling would still come across just in the way that she crafts her words, and in that case the world and the characters. I honestly think her writing is constantly just so beautiful, and it's always very atmospheric as well. I think her descriptions and her settings are so vivid. It really helps to immerse you in the story, and as I was saying, I was completely consumed by this from the beginning. I think also, as mentioned, those second perspective chapters really did help pull you in and immerse you even further. You really felt like you were part of the story. I think another thing that helps you feel part of the story was the fact that you were kind of thrown into this world at the same time as Holland. You were kind of exploring and discovering new things about this world with Holland, and as we were going through different settings and with different characters, exploring different parts of this world and parts of the magic, you were almost on that journey with Holland. It really felt like you were getting the mystery and the puzzle pieces together and making sense of the world together. So I really think that did help kind of bring me into the book and feel like part of the story, and therefore be a lot more invested and impacted by what was going on. And I also think I briefly mentioned how I just love how much Holland has this desire and belief in these folklore tales and legends, and I think that really did make me kind of root for her the whole way through. And I think just the way that she really did want to and did believe in these tales was very endearing to her character. I think it made her very likable. I think her backstory as well, in kind of pieces of her history that we got throughout, and her relationship to different characters really made her a likable character, a character that you cared about, and one that you were rooting for the whole way through. So I think she was a very enjoyable character to follow and go along with. And I have seen some people describe her as being naive and perhaps a bit annoying because she so easily puts her trust in a lot of people. I think those qualities did make her feel a bit more human, and also I think with her being sometimes portrayed in that way, I think it added to this sense of intrigue and curiosity surrounding the world. I think even as a reader, it was hard to discern who to trust, who not to trust. Everyone seemed untrustworthy untrustworthy. Everything seemed like there was more going on behind the scenes that we didn't know. So I think having those characteristics kind of also put us in Holland's shoes anyway, and I almost felt like I was being naive too, and I didn't know who to trust. So I feel like, for me at least, I didn't fully think that she was fully naive anyway, but I think the aspects of that characteristic that we did get helped to, again, engage the reader because it felt relatable, and I think, like I said, it helped to create the kind of intense atmosphere and environment of this world, kind of heightened the danger of not knowing who to trust, and that kind of feeling that every decision that you make is going to have a consequence, it's going to have an impact, and it's going to change the trajectory of the story, which I think did become a kind of element of this story, having different decisions and leading to different paths that you could go down, and I think that was really interesting. I do think, whilst I do get why for some people that was annoying to read and they didn't necessarily click with it, I think for me it worked for the way the story was being told and just the overall atmosphere, because I do think at times this did just feel like a huge fever dream, but not in a bad way. It was in an absolutely consuming, interesting, fascinating way, and I feel like that fever dream atmosphere again was a result of this such whimsical, magical writing in a world where nothing is as it seems, and there's so much going on with so many different settings and characters. Like I said, you don't know who, what to trust. You're going along this journey trying to put everything together in a world that just seems so wild and untrustworthy, but also so fascinating. So I think overall it just all worked so well together, and I loved every second of it. And I also think there is so much potential with the world and the magic and the abilities to tap into that a bit more and to delve a bit deeper into the intricacies of the magic system, which I think is going to be so fascinating to explore if we do get a chance to explore that in the later books, because I think we probably will, and I think it will be very interesting to explore that a bit further, as well as just interesting to see where this story goes in the next book anyway, because I honestly have no idea. I'm so here for it. I think it'll be so intriguing to see where these characters go, and just also what the focus of the next story is going to be, because I feel like this book did have quite a satisfying ending. Like, I think it was wrapped up very nicely, and we did have a lot of tying up of loose ends, but obviously there were just enough threads to keep you intrigued and invested for a next book and to make you wonder and think about what could possibly happen next. So I am definitely excited for the next installment. Like I said, I'm very curious and fascinated to see where we go with it, and I just think it's going to be great because this was great, and I honestly just think Stephanie Garber has a way with words, and I think everything she creates is just so magical and whimsical that for me it is just the epitome of the writing that I enjoy. It's one of my favourite types of writing, one of my favourite types of books, settings, just the whimsy and magic of it all. I will always love it. This was phenomenal. I absolutely loved it, and of course I had to give it 5 stars. I just had the best time, and I think it was so beautiful, and I kind of already want to read it again because I feel like if I were to pick it up and read it again, I would notice so many more details that I didn't pick up on before, because that is how detailed this writing and this world is. Alas, I will not reread it straight away right this second, because I have already chosen my next book, and I will show you in just a moment. Yeah, just to conclude, I did honestly love this so much. Like I said, 5 stars. I need to know what happens next, so highly recommend this one. And with a 4.5 star rating and a 5-star rating, this mood reading blog is going amazingly. I mean, choosing 2 of my favourite authors, it's pretty clear obviously it was going to be a success from the beginning anyway, but that's obviously still a good thing. So I did finish Alchemy of Secrets last night, as I said, and I was going to start another book before I went to bed. However, I really just could not decide. I was being so indecisive, and I just wasn't sure what I actually wanted to pick up. However, I have now chosen what book I'm going to pick up, and that is I Hope This Doesn't Find You by Anne Liang. And this is a cute, short little YA romance, so I thought this could be the perfect book to read right now. Just something quick and fun, and I have heard absolutely amazing things about this book. And also, fun fact, this is going to be my 100th book of 2025, which is absolutely insane. I hope it's a good one, and I do think it is going to be, because I do think you can't really go wrong with a YA romance. Last time I said that, I did end up giving the book 3 stars. However, I do know a lot of people have rated this one 5 stars, so I think I am probably going to enjoy this one a lot more than I enjoyed that one. Even with that one, it was still a good fun time. It was just kind of an average reading experience. So regardless, this is going to be a good fun time, and I think this is going to be a lot more than an average reading experience. So I'm excited to get into it, and I think I'm going to fly through it because it is short, it is YA, and I think it sounds really interesting. I don't fully know the full story, but I think it's something to do with emails, and it's kind of enemies to lovers, but in that cute, like, YA, giggly fun way. So it's going to be interesting, but I will give you more of a synopsis once I've started it, along with my first thoughts. I think it's going to be a good one, so I'm excited. Please ignore the stuff that's on the bed. I've just got some clothes I haven't put away yet and my laptop because I was just editing on it. It was on charge while I was editing, so it's still a bit warm, so I'm just leaving it before I put it back in the case to put it away. But anyway, it is time to give my first thoughts on I Hope This Doesn't Find You. I am only 85 pages in, so usually I try and do an update at least 100 pages in, but since this one's so short and only just over 300 pages anyway, it's probably around the same percentage, if not a little bit more, than I normally would be updating at. I just thought now would be a good time to give an update since I'm just about to sit down and read a decent chunk of time anyway, so I'm giving you my first update now. In I Hope This Doesn't Find You, we are following our main character Sadie and kind of her academic rival, her enemy Julius. Now these two have been academic rivals pretty much for the best part of 10 years, I think it is. Everything they do at school, they're in competition with each other, and Sadie even keeps a point system in her head in which she awards points for things like who did better in a quiz, or basically just any time one of them does something better than the other, she likes to keep track of it in her brain. That's not a constant thing, it's only been mentioned a couple of times. I don't think it's a major thing that is gonna actually keep happening, but I just thought it was funny, so I thought I'd mention that. Anyway, that kind of, I think, sums up just the full competitive nature that they both have with each other. Julius, as well as being very academically bright, he is also very charming, he's well liked, he's very confident within himself from what we have seen so far, whereas Sadie is a bit more on the reserved side, and she's a notorious people pleaser. She always has to make sure everyone's happy, she puts everyone above herself, she always makes sure she's really nice to everybody, that she helps people when she can, and just keep this overall kind of perfect image and portrayal of herself. Naturally, you're going to have a lot of pent-up frustration and anger, and the way that Sadie deals with this is drafting emails, usually in response to other people's emails that have kind of incited this kind of anger in her, but obviously she doesn't send them, she keeps them in her draft, and it's just a kind of outlet for her frustration and a way to get rid of the emotions that she can't portray as this kind of perfectionist people pleaser image that she has going on. However, one day towards the start of this book, those emails, they get sent out. So now everyone that she has ever written an email draft about has been sent that email. She's not really in everyone's good books at the moment, and not only are these fellow students as well as a lot of emails to Julius, there were some to the teachers as well, so this has kind of become a whole school issue. So she's got a lot of negative attention directed to herself, but also to her rivalry with Julius, as he was kind of the main victim, I suppose you could say, of these emails and this scenario. And we are now in a situation where they are having to spend a lot of time together to kind of repair the image that this situation has kind of put on the school's reputation. Bit of a long story there, that will make more sense once you read it. But yeah, so it's a lot of fun so far. I just think that is just such a fun, cutesy kind of storyline. I think you usually find in YA book, and I really do like how so far Sadie and Julius do have very distinct personalities and personas and different things about their characters that make them unique and also give them a lot of character depth. And I think we will probably get to exploring a lot more of Julius as we get further into the book, so I'm intrigued to kind of see where his character depth will come through. I think so far Sadie does seem to be a very fleshed out character. She's got a lot of different facets to her personality. I think it'll be interesting to kind of see her work through her people pleasing, as I feel like this situation is kind of a catalyst, her maybe overcoming that side of her personality and maybe speaking up a bit more for herself, which I think is a positive that has come from all her emails being sent, is that she no longer can kind of hide those emotions as they are out for the public to see and everyone's talking about them, or at least it will eventually be a positive thing for Sadie. So I think it's interesting to see Sadie kind of develop a bit from the situation, if that makes sense. As much as I said earlier that this enemies to lovers is probably going to be enemies to lovers in like the cutesy
cheesy, funny YA way, and while I do think that is true, they are not like true enemies, but at the moment it does seem that there is a lot of genuine dislike, but also you can kind of see underneath that it kind of does run along the lines of there's a thin line between love and hate. Not that they love each other at this stage anyway, I'm assuming that will be where we end up going in this book. It's almost like they're almost infatuated with each other or obsessed with besting one another, and I think there is a line between hating or thoroughly disliking and also kind of being a bit obsessed with each other, even though they are both definitely in denial that there's anything between them. They definitely seem to be proper, at least academic rivals. Like, they're definitely rivaling each other. They definitely have a lot of outwardly seeming negative opinions and things towards each other. Even in some of Sadie's emails, she'll be focusing about Julius's eyes look or the way his hands are, so you can see, even though that was portrayed in a very negative way, I think just that kind of obsessive attention to detail, and also Julius's charming teasing way, which again sometimes does come across as more like a negative teasing. I think both of those things do kind of show that there is something underneath that I am excited for these characters to kind of realise for themselves and to build on that together and kind of see where it takes them. I think it's going to be interesting how we get from these proper academic rivals to have something more, which I'm, like I said, guessing that that's where the story's going to go. I'm definitely enjoying this so far. I still think this cover is gorgeous, and yeah, I'm just going to sit down and read some more of it now. I definitely think it's not going to take me very long to get through, because it is quite short anyway, and the text isn't huge. Like, it's not taking me that long to read a page, for example. So 85 pages that I have read, I read in a bit under an hour, I would say, earlier on. So I think I really kind of only need 2.5 hours max to finish this book, which probably won't end up being tonight, but I should get the majority of it done tonight and then read it tomorrow. But that's not how it goes, and that's not how it goes. Obviously, me saying that isn't because I'm like, I need to get to this, I need to finish this book straight away, like I need to rush through it, because I don't. It's just me predicting that I don't think it'll take me long anyway. But again, not me saying I'm rushing through it, because I'm absolutely not. But because it is so short, I probably will see you again once I finished it. I have just finished this, and therefore I have now read 100 books so far this year. The fact that I've read 100 feels absolutely insane to me, especially because my goal was 75. So not only have I already hit that, but I've surpassed it by 25 books, and I still have a month and a half to go, so that is absolutely crazy. Anyway, this book was so good. It was adorable, it had a lot of depth to it, it had a very enticing plot and characters, and it was just so much fun, and I really did love it. I think I'm going to give this one 4 stars, but I do actually think it's one of the best YA romances that I have read. Maybe if I read this a couple of years ago, I would have given it a full 5 star. I just think now that I am growing older, as much as I can still enjoy and absolutely love a YA romance the way that I have enjoyed and loved this one, I think they're just now slightly less relatable, and therefore I can't connect as well to them, perhaps. So I think maybe that's why it's kind of keeping me back from a 5-star romance, because I think part of why I've always loved YA romances as I was growing up was just because they were so fun to read and kind of daydream about experiencing that kind of romance as someone who was coming of age at the time, and, you know, as someone who could relate to the in-school experiences. And while of course I can still relate to them in the sense of looking back on my past, I think when I was a bit younger reading them, one, it was a bit more fresh being in that school situation, or I was actually still in that school situation, so I think it was just a bit easier to connect and relate to. Not saying that I didn't find this easy to connect to, because you can still connect to the characters, but I just think because it is just kind of a bit less currently relatable and easy to connect to, I think that's why it's maybe not giving me those 5-star feelings. But I think as far as books go, I don't actually have any complaints about this. Like, it may have been short, but I think we got a very fleshed out plot and a very fleshed out relationship and character development. I think the writing for this was so beautiful as well. I think Anne Liang definitely has beautiful writing style, so I'm excited to read more of her books. It's a very high 4-star for me, a very positive book, and yeah, I do think it is one of the best YA romances I've read, just because of the way that the writing was and the way that the plot and the characters and everything were just came together to create just such a cute book that did have depth to it. Like, I think this is the type of YA romance I have always loved the most. Just because this book wasn't necessarily a 5-star, obviously I still loved it, and that doesn't necessarily mean that any YA romance I read from now on is never going to
to be a 5-star, because there could still be a YA romance out there that I do love and do get 5-star feelings for. It's not anything against this book that it didn't get that rating, because obviously 4 is still an amazing rating anyway. And if I'm telling you I love the book anyway, I think you should focus more on the fact that I'm saying I loved it than the fact that I only give it 4 stars, because also there are a lot of books that I have loved that I have given 4 stars. Like 4 stars is still a great rating, and I'm sure everyone knows and thinks that anyway. I just don't want it to seem confusing by me saying it's one of the best YA romances that I've read and I've only given it 4 stars, because I think those two things can still be true in my personal experience anyway. Absolutely loved where we went with this story. I do think there was one bit of the story that was a bit predictable, but I think again that's kind of expected with a YA romance. Like, they are pretty formulaic, although I do think a lot of this did feel unique, and I think that's why I did love it. I think in terms of there being an almost mystery around how the emails were sent out, I think that was pretty predictable and pretty easy to spot. But again, I think the clues that led me to that were kind of quite obvious clues, so I think you might have been supposed to clue into that anyway. So that might have been a bit predictable, but because the emails were the main kind of plot of the book, but we weren't really entirely concerned about finding out how they were sent or who sent them. So I think because it wasn't kind of like this main mystery that we were trying to solve, I think the fact that it was a bit predictable didn't really hinder the plot or anything. But I still think it led to quite a nice way of rounding out the plot by having that reveal anyway. This was just so cute. Yeah, I don't really have anything bad to say about it. I just enjoyed every minute of it. If you enjoy YA romances, I would definitely recommend this one, because like I've said multiple times, I did really love it. I enjoyed it, had the best time reading it. And it's short and sweet and snappy, but yet still fully developed and fully fleshed out. So I think really you can't go wrong with it, and I think why not? So I would definitely recommend this one. And I think that also is another success to add to this mood reading vlog. All 3 of these books have been a success. I've really enjoyed reading them. I've really enjoyed doing this mood reading vlog, and I hope you have enjoyed it too. If you have enjoyed it, please do leave a like and maybe even comment below whether you are a mood reader or a straight TBR reader. I find that really interesting. And also, if you want to see more reading vlogs like this, please do subscribe. It would mean the world to me, and hopefully I will see you in the next video.